Ash Hamilton, thank you for being with us today, sir.
Hey, thank you so much. It's going to be a lot of fun. It looks like it anyways.
Cool. Um, Ash has a new film. He is the director, the writer, co-stars in Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. We're going to talk about that in a moment, obviously, and have Ash tell us about his film. But wanted to kind of start off, as with anything in life, there's good horror, there's run-of-the-mill horror, and there is suck job horror. Okay.
Okay.
There's a lot of horror out there now, man. I watch a lot of it.
Oh yeah.
What, in your opinion, and again, this is really a tough question. You could write a book about it, but what essentially makes good horror to you, Ash?
I think it's anything that's even slightly provocative to me. I think the worst horror, and it's strange because with this question, like I think I can more accurately answer what bad horror is.
Yeah.
And then maybe we can circle around to the good horror after the bad horror.
Yeah.
I think that the bad horror is like is stuff that's like way too disposable for me. It's not bad, it's not good, it's somewhere in the middle. It's a retread of a lot we've seen before. Nobody's really trying to do anything different. I mean, you've got some filmmakers out there that really know their craft.
Yeah.
And you watch it and you're not thinking to yourself that this is poorly shot or it's poorly written or it's poorly acted.
Yeah.
But it is immediately forgettable. And I think that to me sometimes is sort of the worst, is that you can sort of tell like a studio had a slot.
Yeah.
And they knew a guy.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, listen, we need something for a September 20th release. What could you do? What can you make? And a guy's like, hey, I'm a service.
But it's a production, and we'll get it out there for the people, and everybody's satisfied.
Yeah, it's like serviceable cinema sometimes.
Yeah.
Is maybe one of the biggest offenders for me, because I've seen some really low budget schlocky horror films that I had a fantastic time with. Like you could tell that everyone involved was having fun.
Yeah.
I have seen some mainstream really big budget horror stuff that did it right. Like you could tell that, they took advantage of their budget and were able to really, hit their marks and give you something that we didn't think that we'd see, especially mainstream audiences. But it's that middle ground, that area in the middle, that I think I get really confused at. So I think good horror is good intention, really good use of budget, and this idea that we're going to show somebody something different, even if they don't like it. Like even if you set out and go, man, the audience is probably not going to respond to this. This is uncomfortable, or the audience is going to think it's cheesy or whatever. But somebody goes, man, we just got to do this. Like we got to shoot for the stars and, pray we don't hit the ceiling. And then there are other people who look at the ceiling and go, let's come in at a good 12 inches before that. And we're happy with it.
Which brings us to your film, which we definitely want to talk about. And I have seen, and I dug it.
Thank you.
Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. And I described it in my review, which you've read. I think it's pretty accurate. And I've never really seen a film done this way. It's a movie about a documentary about the making of a documentary that never was. Is that relatively accurate?
It's a bit of an onion. There's some peeling away that you got to do there. I think you described it really well, probably better than I could do it. I sort of stumble when I talk about it, but you did it really well. Thank you.
Well, thanks. Yeah, and I just want you to tell us about it. It's really interesting the way you did it. I talked about found footage in my review, and I've seen so many found footage films. They've kind of gone by the wayside. Everybody was doing them because they were cheap, easy, and popular, and so many of them were really, really awful. But they took advantage of riding the tide. That's not what your movie's doing here. I'm going to give the floor to you and just tell us about Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story, and about making the film. And what you, when people watch your film, what you want to get across to your viewers.
So I think that's something that we started out doing, which is interesting, is that I did not want to make a found footage film. I really did. We live on a piece of land that my wife's family owns, and it's extremely isolated and very, very remote. We do not have a neighbor for past a mile. It's like we have a single LED light that has about 50 feet, about a 50-foot spread of light And once you get past that, you're in another world. Like, forget it. You're in the stars. There's nothing to see unless the moon is out. And we
Yeah.
had friends stop by and say, your house is creepy as hell. Not because it's creepy inside, it's creepy outside. Like, we drove by a couple times and we didn't even see it. And then we finally saw it. We're like, I've got to drive out of here by myself at night, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So we're like, we've got our location, like we've got our house, and there are a few acres surrounding that we could utilize too, and a couple other people that were willing to let us use some land and stuff. So we're like, okay, I think we've got a location. And there have been instances where we've been out at night and we had sort of seen some things past a tree line and stuff, some lights that could have been drones, could have been something else. But, there's a fanciful part of our brain that begins to sort of hyper speculate on this, like, what is this? And then you go so many levels deep and then you end up scaring yourself at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're like, okay, so that might be something. We had some actors that we wanted, like some actors who had been in several things and who we'd worked with in the past. And it just wasn't coming together. Like, schedules still post COVID were very weird. People didn't have the time, and we got a little disenfranchised at first because it wasn't coming together.
Mhm.
And then we sat down and we said, what if we try using non-actors? Like, what if we just get people that we know, like people that are over at our house a lot? Like, if they've got that time to come visit, they've got that time to be in a
It
movie.
so often works, though. I've talked to a lot of people who've done what you did, but yeah, no, that's what you do.
Yeah, it was this out of necessity thing. We're going to get some people in this film that probably don't even want to be in the film, but it's going to happen. And we started shooting, and it was interesting because Sean Ed plays Sean Miller,
Mhm.
and Stacy Britton plays Stacy Miller, and they're a real life couple who had no ambitions to act, who
Okay.
was part of a tabletop role playing game night that we had at our house.
Wow, that's a trip. They were good.
And
Yeah.
and we sort of took the script that we had that was a little more rigid, a little more structured, and I said, we can't do it this way. Like, these people aren't used to delivering lines, and I'm gonna write with the way that I speak, and it's just not gonna work. So we got people in front of a camera, and we had discussions where I said, here's the beats we need to hit, like, here's the plot points and beats we need to hit, and we're gonna try to get this as casually as possible so that we start a conversation, and I'm gonna insert some questions in the middle of the conversation, and we'll just keep rolling. And we did a few of those Q&As, and I started editing this stuff. I cobbled together about like 7 to 8 minutes of footage. And I got some of the people back in who were acting in it, who were a little they were a little timid because they had never acted before and didn't know how this was going to look. And they didn't want to see the film and go, oh my God, I'm horrible in it. And I said, hey, let's sit down and let's take a look at what I've edited. It's not completely pretty, it's a little rough, but I said it gives you an idea of sort of the linear storyline that I'm going for here. And they watched the 8 minutes and they said, this looks like a movie. Like, like, this looks like somebody actually made a movie. And I'm like, well, thank you, because I made it. Like, thank you for your unbridled enthusiasm. And then people started to get, like, people involved started to get really excited about it. And we were able to do some pretty crafty things, which is when you see somebody on film that is an author, they're an actual author. So
Yeah.
they're people who are used to Q&As. We had some really early screenings, like really, really early stuff before I even had any of the large pieces of visual effects, like towards the end of the film. And I was just bringing it to people, and I just said, take a look at it. These were people like in the industry, people who I'd worked with in other films, and I just said, just take a look at this. Just tell me what you think of this. And I remember getting a phone call from an actress friend of mine who's been in the business a very long time, and she's like, listen, I just need you to tell me how much of this is real. Just tell me how much of this is real before
Wow.
we have a conversation about whether I like it or not. And I like, silently whispered, like, there's a whole lot of bullshit in here. Okay, sorry. And she was like,
People know that. Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
now I really liked it. because before I was really afraid that these guys were gone.
This is good.
But now I really like it. And
Yeah.
you know, we had a couple real positive early drafts. And at that point I was like, okay, then we'll reinvest a little more time and a little more money, and get that half an hour looking a little more studio. Like that was sort of our ambition then, is like we need to put some stuff in that half an hour that's going to elevate it a little more. We need some solid, like real, you know, special effects and some digital stuff that, you know, if we can handle it.
Yeah.
And then we did that, and then we looked at the full thing, and you know, we all said, oh, this is a movie, just like everybody else did. And then we got pretty excited about it.
Well, cool. Well, the film is Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story. Very cool film. I've seen it. I do recommend it. And the creative force behind the film is who we've been talking to here for the last several moments. And that is Ash Hamilton. He is the writer, director, and co-star. Ash Hamilton, thank you very much, man. We appreciate it. All the best with Holes in the Sky, the Sean Miller story.
Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. I had a blast today talking about the film. Thanks for having me on.